Welcome to Ask the First Selectman, our guest, John Zagrodzky. And we have a question from Todd Howell, who starts off by saying, "Thank you for conducting these sessions. I appreciate your transparency and willingness to engage with the community." And his questions deal with town infrastructure. He says, over the past couple of years, utility companies have conducted multiple fiber optic cable installations, both overhead and underground. While much of the work occurs within the town's right-of-way, the subcontractors performing the work often leave behind a disorderly and unkempt appearance. Green utility boxes frequently have wires protruding, conduits run haphazardly in multiple locations along telephone poles, excess cables are left coiled or dangling. Does the town regulate cable installations or issue permits to ensure proper cleanup and maintenance?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the shout out about the Ask the First Selectman series. I'm happy to be as transparent as possible about all this. But kudos go to Jim Cameron. He was the one that had the idea to create these little short videos to explain things. And I think it's a great way to connect. And we love your questions. Send them in. We've got all the time in the world to answer them. So a couple of things on these cables. First of all, you're right. The unsightliness of some of the utility poles it goes beyond that. I've come up to ones where instead of taking out the utility pole, they actually just stack another one right next to it. And you look up and down Leroy, for example, there's several of those out there that I've looked at, and I've spoken with the utility about that untidiness, if you will. They do as much as they can. The problem is frankly resources. And so if you think about all the bigger problems they have with regard to power outages, mitigating and managing storm damage, and trying to get those resources deployed all over the state, what happens is that when they've got an installation and those guys either leave cables out or cables fall from those installations, we end up with an unsightly mess. And so what I've done is spoken with them about that and asked them to try to be a bit more orderly with those installations and help us in that regard. But let me ask this, if any of you find particular spots where that is really unsightly, or more importantly, if there's a cable or anything that's dangling on your property, I would ask that you contact my office immediately or contact Eversource immediately. Just as a reminder, any cable that's hanging from anywhere should be assumed to be live and dangerous. So if you see that, please don't take any action yourself and do not touch any of that. It's super important that that be handled by a professional because it's a real safety issue. So please don't get anywhere near those unsightly cables or boxes that you see. But that said, we have a great contact at Eversource who takes all of this seriously. And if we have areas that are particularly bad, he will help us get connected with the folks to clean all that up. The only other thing I'd say is I was contacted a while back by a gentleman who had a cable dangling in his yard. And it turned out not to be a power company cable because it wasn't off a power line. It was actually from a cable company. And it was a Frontier cable, and I was able to get in touch with them to get that cleaned up. So if any of you have that on your property or any kind of dangling wires that have been bothering you or you need cleaned up, give me a call. I've got some contacts to deal with that as well. I'm happy to help.
You'll see John Zagrodzky's office phone number down below here, so you can reach out to him if you have follow-up questions about dangling cables and such. If you have other questions for our first selectman, just send them along to us. We will be glad to ask them for you. DarianTV79 at gmail.com.